Welcome again to Whiskey Congress. I'm coming at you from Frederick, Maryland. Steve is back home in Cleveland. I was off the grid all weekend. I was dealing with but attending a family reunion. And so anyway, Steve, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. So I finally get back on the social media grid, and I got on Facebook, and I see you pulling 800 pounds off the ground at a deadlift-only meet, which I know is a personal record for you, so congratulations.
Yeah. It's funny. A friend of mine who, he's got a gym in Canton, Ohio, and I see him at the different meets. He put this meet on in Kent, home of the Kent State, what are they, the Falcons?
Golden Flashes?
Golden Flashes, right. And he's like, hey, you got to do this meet. And I said, man, I don't know. I don't want to. It's not right in my training and everything else. And he kind of fought me on it. And finally, I said, okay, fine, I'll do the meet. And I didn't do anything particularly special, but I did show up. And you never know who else is going to show up. And I ended up pulling that 800 pounds off the ground and ended up being a personal best. Now, it wasn't a sanctioned meet, and like I said, it was deadlift only, so there wasn't the squat and the bench to kind of tire you out. So, but that, it's a little bit of a monkey off my back. Not that anyone assumes that they can just do 800 pounds, but it does put me in pretty special company. So it's pretty excited and pretty humbled to have that experience. So thank you for noticing.
Dude, it was impressive. I remember in college hearing a story that the first time someone bench pressed 300 pounds, they thought they were doing 290. And once they did it, they said, by the way, you just did 300 pounds. And actually the first time I did 300, my friend did that to me, and that's when he told me that story. And so you now do have that monkey off your back. 800 should no longer feel like insurmountable to you. And watching it live, I mean, you crushed that. It was clear you were picking up a shit ton of weight, but you got that up and you locked it out, so that was awesome.
Yeah, it's so weird, especially with the deadlift. You watch it on video, and a lot of lifters go through this, and you watch it on video and it comes up off the floor pretty good. You watch the lockout, it goes back down, but when you have that weight in your hand, it literally feels like you're there for an hour.
I'm sure.
I feel like I can see every person's face in the crowd. You can hear specific voices. My parents were there with my daughter, and so I could hear, it was like high school football all over again in college. I could hear my mom's voice specifically just screaming at me, pure raw emotion. So, I was able to lock it up and get it. It ended up winning the meet. And actually, that was a cash meet, so I actually took home a check for like $300.
Oh, wow.
So, right, so, new bottle of whiskey.
If a bottle of Cleveland whiskey ends up in our studio, that would be a bad thing, but...
Definitely. I mean, although I am drinking a new bottle of Four Roses single barrel this evening, but that was bought prior to yesterday, so...
No offense taken. If we were in studio, I would be tipping it with you, but I'm on the road, so I'm drinking red wine tonight.
So speaking on the road, so after this meet, right, me and my daughter are headed back to Cleveland, and we're going down the street just outside of Kent, Ohio. Nice, very nice area, nice neighborhood, right before you get on the turnpike. And police officer gets behind me, throws his legs on, right as I'm getting on Route 8 to get onto the turnpike. And so I'm a little, I actually don't know why he's pulling me over. I'm just like, well, my car's brand new, so it's not a tail light.
Right.
Again, it's brand new, nothing's expired. So, he comes over, and I put, both hands on the steering wheel, 10 and 2. I make sure my phone is visible, and I don't need to reach for anything. And so, we have an exchange, and he says, he asked for the license and registration, I provide it. Then, he asked where I'm coming from, and I said, there was a meet at Kent State, and, I'm just leaving it. I happened to win, because they gave me a big fake check, not too big, but it was probably about 6 by 12
Not a Happy Gilmore size check, but
No, which I was kind of actually hoping for, but no, it was just like, a little bit bigger than a bumper sticker. And so I had that in the front seat, and I just kind of nodded my head towards it. And so he says that he pulled me over for speeding, and I said, I'm not going to argue with you, but I thought that I was going a reasonable speed. And he says, yeah, you were going 40 and a 35. I said,
shit.
Okay. I said, all right. So he goes back and gets in his car. Then another cop car pulls up, right? A guy, this one, he was in a car, a Charger. The other guy was in an SUV, an Explorer. So he pulls up behind him. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, are you serious? I was going 5 miles over the speed limit. You need 2 police? Right? Like, so I'm sitting there, I'm waiting. I'm sitting there and talking back and forth or whatever. And he comes, now mind you, my daughter's in the car, right? Like, so I'm a little bit nervous. There's 2 police cars there's 2 police cars there. And, I'm just like, this does not feel great, right? So the other cop goes and he comes and he's along the driver's side of my car, but staying back. Now, mind you, we're on an on-ramp to get on the freeway, okay? So now I'm really nervous because I can clearly see him, like, back on the driver's side of my car, and the other guy comes in on the passenger side to talk to me, right? So, he gives me my stuff back, and he's just like, everything looks good here. I'm going to let you off with a warning. Just take it easy on the speed. And my daughter in the back seat, who, just turned 3, says, Mr. Officer, are you going to arrest my daddy? And I'm like,
oh boy.
Right, and to his credit, he just said, no, not today. Your daddy seems like a nice guy. We're going to let him off with just a warning. And then he kind of taps the thing, and he goes, and the other guy goes, and they get in their cars. I drive off, and there was really no incident, right? Like, so it wasn't a big story, but like, it just, the whole thing being pulled over for going 5 miles over the speed limit, which, yes, I was going faster than the speed limit, but I mean, there were people, like, I know for a fact that if I was going 40, then the guy ahead of me, in the Impala was flying. Like, he had to be going, 55 or 60. And I thought it was bizarre that he pulled me over, but then, so it was kind of a dick move for him to pull me over, but then he completely flips the switch, and ends up, being pretty cool about the whole thing. And I don't understand it. I'm not sure what happened. A big thing, though, is just that my main focus was, be respectful, put your hands someplace safe, no big motions, no hand gestures, anything like that. I told him, because my insurance card is on my phone, right? Like,
right.
Progressive, that's how they do it. So I told him, because he asked for my insurance, I said, hey, insurance is on my phone. My phone is in the cup holder. If you want to see it, I just need to reach down and grab it, right? And I kind of slowly point down at it, and then he kind of gestures me to go ahead, and like I'm moving real slow, and he's like, he did ask me why I was nervous, and I said, come on.
Have you watched the news?
I said, come on, you're kidding, right? Like, this is, and he's like, never mind. He kind of was like, I understand. And I don't know somewhere in our interaction, if he just kind of put it all together and said, you know what, this is kind of, like, if he just realized in his head it was pointless or what. But, I don't know, it was just a weird situation. I mean, nothing of note happened, but I was feeling pretty good. I mean, I break a personal record. I won 300 bones. I get pulled over and I don't get a ticket. You better believe I was bumping a little Ice Cube. It was a good day after that.
Well, thankfully it wasn't fuck the police, because that probably would have made things go differently.
Well, no. And I didn't have any pork for breakfast, so, got the breakfast cooked with no hog.
Well, I'm glad.
I feel like you don't know the word. I feel like you might not know the words to that song.
I know that song. That's a song I've heard Ice Cube get interviewed and say that no matter what he's doing, whenever he does a show, he has to do "It Was a Good Day." I do not know the lyrics inside and out, but I do know the song.
Maybe one of the greatest hip-hop songs ever. And since you're such a big NWA fan, I do believe you need to get acquainted with it.
I've listened to the song. I just know the...
Listen, today was a good... You get the words to that song memorized. That song, you listen to that song driving down the street when you're having a good day or a bad day, fixes it. Whatever the problem, if you're having a bad day, it'll fix it. If you're having a good day, it'll make it better. Like for me, yesterday I was having a good day. Listening to that made that good day better. Help you out, change your life.
Noted. Thank you. I did listen to the story. If you listen to the last episode, I did listen to the story of OJ while sober. I don't necessarily want to go down that road again, but yes, I'll concede that I did miss some key points.
Thank you for the concession.
It was funny. I was in Buffalo for a family reunion, and I have a cousin who's a cop in Lackawanna, New York.
There, by the way.
What's that?
I love Buffalo, by the way. Great city.
I think you're sucking up, but I'll take it.
Yep.
All right, appreciate it. But no, it was a good time. I was in at a family reunion. I talked to my cousin who's a cop, and he's very conservative, and frankly, I know from other conversations, kind of jaded by the job. And I ended up. He's also, by the way, a cousin. I love him, and I used to go fishing with him when I was 12 years old, and I mean, this is someone I grew up with. We talked about a few local issues, and then we started talking about other things. And he talked about how tough it is being a cop with the current media approach to policing. And we talked about a bunch of stuff that I didn't expect us to go down. And one of them was Black Lives Matter and Mike Brown. And he said, the whole hands up, don't shoot thing was bullshit. And I said, I know. If you listen to my show, you'll hear me admit that was a flawed rationale. On the other hand, you have to acknowledge that the city of Ferguson was a powder keg based on socioeconomic issues and inappropriate enforcement. He did not argue with that at all. In fact, he acknowledged that and said pretty much all of this is socioeconomic. And we talked. And I said, he knows he knew me as a kid. He probably didn't know that it was true to this date, but I mentioned how I've never smoked weed, and I said, but I think it's ridiculous that it's illegal. And he told me, listen, when I pull someone over and their car reeks of weed, I ask them if they have any, and if they say yeah, I tell them, please hand it over. You do that, I'm not going to arrest you. He goes, it's a violation, not a misdemeanor, so that's legal for me to do. Now, my cousin is a super clean cut. My family's had a few issues along the way, and he's been part of it. He actually arrested one of our mutual cousins once. Actually, two, yeah, and it's an ugly story that I don't want to get into. The funny thing was that when they got arrested,
that is so great.
You know what? I'm going to throw this out there. If as listeners, if you want details, you have to email at jim@whiskeycongress.com. Because I'm not going to put this on the air.
Your family would really appreciate that.
Well, they don't need Steve. They don't need to because it got put on the local news when it happened, and it's the one time I can remember that somebody pronounced our last name for the first time and nailed it. People usually butcher my name, and boy, I would have loved it if this was one of those cases. But nope, nailed it. But anyway, it was interesting talking to him because, like I said, he's got a chip on his shoulders, and again, we grew up together. And I said things like, it all started when I told him I was selected for jury duty, and he said, there's no way they'll let you on a jury. You're like me. And I said, well, Chris, I have an open mind about certain things that maybe we're not on the same page. I mentioned the OJ verdict. He said, oh, the LA cops fucked that up brutally. I would have said not guilty. And then we talked about, pot and how pot's not a big deal. And then he talked about some of the uglier drug stuff he sees, and it's just like, wow. But it was great. This was a guy who probably wouldn't, certainly wouldn't email us a pat on the back. But, I told him we might want to talk to him on the show, and I didn't commit to anything because I don't do that. But he said, if you talk to me on the show, you probably wouldn't want to hear what I had to say. And I said, hey, we want honesty. So who knows? But it was.
Listen. If we can get the schedules lined up, I think that would be an interesting conversation. Having another experienced person talking about, how he sees the situation from his vantage point as a police officer. We've had Mike Wood on the show multiple times. and we know his vantage point as a former Baltimore police officer. So, having a different legal perspective, I think is good.
It's worth considering. We can talk about. I don't want to put him in an uncomfortable spot because he's family, but it was interesting, and it was hearing it from the perspective of a cop who's, like I said, seen a lot of shit and has kind of a jaded view, that he would still say things like, he talked about Michael Brown's being killed, and I said, well, we said the same thing on our show, that not the perfect victim for a lot of reasons. And he said, look, when a cop shoots someone unjustifiably, they should go to jail for the rest of their lives, and I wouldn't blink an eye at that. And I went, wow, I didn't even ask that question, and you said that. So it was interesting.
Well, I mean that's which plenty of people will say that, but then all of a sudden, then okay, define justifiable, right, or unjustifiable. Like, when is it unjustifiable? And you go through these different shootings, and then everything becomes justified, right? Like, so
true enough. In fact, I brought up Philando Castile, and he said, look, you don't know, I don't know what was going on inside the car. And he said, if this was happening, then it was a justifiable shoot. If it wasn't, it wasn't. So,
right.
I mean,
but again, it's as long as everyone. It's easy for everyone to say the whole. Well, if it was unjustifiable, then I would say you should go to jail. But there's nothing about this to me that, like, everything about this to me says it's justified. And so again, I get where he's coming from on that, and again, we can
yeah.
If we can get the schedules to align, then I think it would be great to have him on and talk. But we'll get to that point. We'll get there
honestly, before I even try to commit him to it, I'd want to talk to him a bit more and say, look, we do have listeners, and it won't be hard. It won't be hard to trace it.
I don't know if this is the time to
all right.
Talk about whether we're gonna have him. But
let's do our guest booking discussion on the air. That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. But Steve, it's tough to. Let's talk about that, because there's really nothing big that happened in the political scene this week. So, we might as well, ramble on about that.
Or not.
So, work with me. I'm being sarcastic. Come on.
I know. So was I. Like, that's the thing. Like, you don't get sarcasm, and you're also bad at it. And
I'm good at it. Stop it.
That's
all right.
That's what hurts.
So,
that's what hurts you as a comic.
Thank you. I was really hoping, Steve, that we could discuss me as a comic tonight. All right. So,
I can talk that all night.
Yeah, or not.
Get you coached up, buddy.
I appreciate. I know you're feeling strong for good reasons, but let's move on to our boy Scaramucci.
Where do you start with this guy? The interesting thing about Anthony Scaramucci, who's now the new communications director at the White House, he's really he if you go back to his tweets and just kind of his stance on a lot of things, he's a pretty liberal guy. I think a lot of people saw and see Trump as someone that can be manipulated, right? And so anyone that's trying to make a move in their career and advance, they know if they kiss up to Trump and they praise him and show, loyalty and kiss the ring and that whole sort of thing, then it's a way for them to make a move up the ladder, right? Even if after they're done with Trump, they may not be, people won't want to touch them with a 10-foot stick. It's a way to get themselves in front of the camera. It's a way to get themselves in the White House. It's a way to get themselves, attention, right? We've seen it with Jeffrey Lord, Jeff Sessions, I think Scaramucci himself, even Reince Priebus and, Stephen K. Bannon, just about everybody. A lot of people initially thought this guy was a joke, and then once you figure him out, if you just praise him and you stroke his ego, then he'll want you by his side. And so, Scaramucci, relatively liberal guy, Center was kind of center left, would occasionally shift to the right, but he sees an opportunity with Trump, becomes this big mouthpiece for Trump, and so things get a little, unstable in the Trump organization. They bring in Scaramucci. Sean Spicer quits in a fit of rage because they bring this guy in. So Sean Spicer looks kind of, emotional and imbalanced, and we all knew that he was the first to go in the death pool, and Scaramucci then immediately shows us probably why. Spicer was probably right? Why this was a bad hire? Because this guy talks too fucking much. Actually, that's really, really the key. Did you actually see Scaramucci's quotes in the New Yorker, Jim?
I didn't see them. I had them read to me while I was driving into Buffalo on Friday. So he called Reince Priebus a paranoid schizophrenic, and then he melded those words in some weird way. He attacked Stephen K. Bannon and called him a cock block, or what was?
No, he said that. He wasn't trying to suck his own cock like Stephen K. Bannon.
You know what? This is why we don't need censorship. Because I was listening to, he wasn't trying to blank his own blank, and I'm trying to figure out the blanks.
Right. And so he said that he wasn't trying to suck his own cock like Stephen K. Bannon, and then he did call Reince Priebus a paranoid schizophrenic, and just kind of went on, and he really just unloaded on a number of people in the White House. He also did call Reince Priebus a cock block.
Okay, I mixed it up then. Okay,
he did so he did say that, but in terms of Stephen K. Bannon, he definitely referenced Stephen K. Bannon trying to suck his own dick, which I think is it's just such a horrible image if you've ever seen a picture of him, but it's also hilarious at the same time.
So,
and here's the real thing. What I don't understand is why you would call a reporter from the New Yorker to say all this. Like, I don't understand it. Trump supporters talk about how the media unfairly, they cover Trump unfairly, and it's the mainstream media versus Trump. It's Breitbart and Trump versus everybody. Breitbart's another group that hits their wagon to Trump. That's obviously because of Bannon, but it's the administration, the Trump administration, doing things like this, just not thinking when they talk. It's Kellyanne Conway talking about alternative facts. It's Reince Priebus, just not being able to explain why the president is tweeting nonstop. It's Scaramucci calling the New Yorker and talking about Stephen K. Bannon trying to suck his own dick. Like, that's stuff that has to be covered. Right?
Steve, I almost want to think this is a planned fuck up. To me, it feels like they wanted this out there. They wanted to be able to call it fake news or call it the liberal media, whether it's fake or not. I know I'm getting totally into conspiracy theory zone here, but then Scaramucci went out and said, I made a few mistakes, I used some bad words, and I trusted a reporter. And on the bad words front, I want to say we need to grow the fuck up, because if people focus on profanity in this world, we've got bombs going off and literally.
It's not just the profanity, though. It's listen. I think it's fun. The reference is funny. Again, it's an awful image, but his exact quote. So this is right out of the New Yorker. And quote: Scaramucci also told me that unlike other senior officials, he had no interest in media attention. I'm not Steve Bannon. I'm not trying to suck my own cock, he said. Speaking of Trump's chief strategist, I'm not trying to build my own brand off the fucking strength of the president. I'm here to serve the country. All right. So, all right. Quote.
To me, this sounds like Matt Damon in Something About Mary. Matt Dillon, sorry. Matt Dillon in Something About Mary. Like, reading in front of the police scanner, I lied to that girl, man. I did all these great things and I have no money and maybe she'll accept me for who I am, knowing she's listening to the police scanner. That's what that sounds like to me.
Yeah, either way, I think that you're right. Like they needed a distraction from the healthcare mess and McCain and everything else, because like right now their agenda is a mess. They're not getting anything through other than they've made a dent in immigration, but the wall hasn't been built. They've got maybe $1 billion for this wall that's supposed to cost $25 billion. So nothing is really happening, other than they've got some people banned from the country, from coming in the country from the terrorists, the six terrorist threat nations. So they needed a distraction, and I think the timing of this is curious at best, and just flat out. I think you're dead on. I think the story was a plant. Like, you call the New Yorker, you say all this shit. You call a reporter from the New Yorker, you say all this shit, and say, "Oh my God, I trusted him. I can't believe he said something." Like,
without ever saying it was off the record.
Right. It's unbelievable. But here's the thing. The way that they continue to screw things up, you almost wonder if this, it's almost like you actually have to be this stupid to continue to screw things up like this. Part of me says, I wonder if this guy legitimately actually called him, said all this stuff, never said anything about being off the record, and now is actually surprised, like, is sitting there, reading this, Friday morning thinking, what the fuck? I can't believe this guy printed all that stuff that I, vomited over the phone, and, why would he do this to me? Like, I wonder if he's actually sitting there thinking that.
I find that hard to believe.
I know, but, it's just like, can they actually be this? Because here's the thing, like, if they actually did this to distract us, right, and part of it is the mainstream media, right? Because if they did it to distract, the mainstream media, like, sucks it up, right? Like, they talk about it, it gets in the cycle for 48 hours, and it's just, there's still plenty of shit to talk about here. And not just about the Trump administration or the fact that their agenda is dead in the water, for so many different reasons, and we'll get to healthcare in a moment, with all the term. But there's plenty of stuff on the Democratic side as well. The Democrats come out with this new plan that we'll talk about in a few minutes. They're trying to launch this investigation into, Comey and Loretta Lynch about how things were handled with Hillary's email server. Trying to dredge that back up. It's just like, hey, nothing we're doing is working, so let's blame Hillary. I think there's plenty to be reported on, and the media just got completely distracted by, the shiny keys, dangled in the air by Scaramucci.
What I don't disagree with what you just said. It's kind of a weird thing, because either they're crazy like a fox or dumb as a rock. And I tend to believe the former, although they're counting on the public being stupid, and that's, I'm sorry to say, way too often a safe bet.
Well, yeah, you know what? It's they're counting on. Hold on, they're counting on the public to be stupid, but they're also. It's not. I don't even think that they're really worried about. This isn't about moving the public. This is about really keeping the mainstream media off base, right? Like they as long as they can keep the mainstream media off base, not focused. Putting out half-ass stories. Everyone's just worried about trying to be first. No one's actually digging. They're not vetting. Then they can continue. Like, they know that they can. They can continue to go to their base with, hey, look, the mainstream media is just out to get us. Look, they're only talking about this thing that Anthony Scaramucci said. They're not even focused on the real issues. What are the real issues? Oh, we can't even talk about the real issues because look at what they're focusing on. Like, they're playing this game of deflection, nonstop. They're constantly on the defensive, but it's almost an offensive move because their offense is saying, hey, mainstream media, CNN, Washington Post, Huffington Post, here's a shiny Frisbee, I just threw it, I just threw it in the yard over. Go get it, and they all rush to it, and it's just like the Trump administration sits back and they're just like, all right, we're really fucking up over here. We got to try to get it fixed, but if not, when they bring the frisbee back, we'll just throw it again. And they're just that's gonna. It feels like that's gonna be their move for the next 4 years or for the next 3 years.
That's where they're trying to go. That's what and it's working so far. Or is to an extent.
And I think if you hold on, the one thing I do want to say is that in our death pool, I'm really, really just all over it. It's like
You're 2 for 2. I'm 1 for 2.
It's like I'm a spiritual medium, right? It's amazing how locked in I am on this. I just want to throw that out there. I'm going to take this time to awkwardly interject
I was like,
how good I am.
Don't injure yourself patting yourself on the back, but okay.
You know what's funny? Like, for me to actually physically pat myself on the back, it would definitely cause me great body. Like, I'm too stiff and I'm too thick, and trying to get my hand to pat myself on the back.
And yet somehow figuratively you're doing it.
Right. The best I could do is just kind of slap myself on the back of the head. But yeah, I just want to throw that in there. No. Anyway, moving on. With all that being said, the question is, one, in our death pool, who do we think is next?
Let me go. Let me go first this time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sessions.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Trump is putting all sorts of pressure on Sessions.
Now we have to throw the challenge flag here. If Jeff Sessions is moved in the administration, removed as AG and moved to a different cabinet level position, does that count? Because I've heard people say he's going to be moved to handle the Homeland Security side of things, which
now that John Kelly is the chief of staff.
Yes.
I don't believe that. I think that Sessions is basically saying, I'm either Attorney General or I'm out. I don't think that he would be moved.
Okay,
I think it ends up being a similar sort of thing when, Spicer and Priebus, that he's fired, he resigned, it doesn't matter, he's not there.
So if Sessions is no longer AG, that counts as a win in the death pool?
Yeah.
Then I'm sticking with Sessions. That's my...
Yeah, I'll give that to you. That's an obvious choice. I think especially with the way Trump has talked about him over the last week to 10 days. To go a different route, I would probably say that there's an outside chance that we could see Bannon out. Outside chance.
Whew.
And my reasoning for this is nothing is happening with the agenda, right? And then Trump is starting to surround himself with people who do not fall in line with the Stephen K. Bannon, idea of how the country should be ran. A lot of the people that Trump are starting to surround himself with and replace people with are people from Goldman Sachs, are people from, that New York elitist, typically Democrat side of things, right? And they're all business people, but they have their own sort of kind of economic micro agenda, that really impacts them as the richest people in the world, and catering to the richest people in the world. And they're not so much worried about, being anti-globalist. They're not so much worried about being nationalists and America first. They're really just worried about making money. And that's not what Stephen K. Bannon is. He wants to close ranks from a figurative standpoint. He wants the country to be America-focused. He wants the country to be more white. He doesn't want to see this infiltration of immigrants. He doesn't want to see, black people owning, major, huge companies in Silicon Valley and being CEO. Like, he doesn't want to see that. He wants things to be, this country was built for, European white people, and it should be that way, and everything good should be for them. And then minorities need to make sure that they're carrying their own weight, but they need to carry their own weight and not get too high up. He definitely wants a glass ceiling. And the people that Trump's bringing in, they don't really give a shit about any of that, right? Like, again, they just want to advance their own economic agenda. So I could see Bannon getting to a point where he doesn't have enough allies. He doesn't have a way to move his agenda forward. His agenda is falling apart. And, either he says fuck it or Trump punts on him. Will it happen before Sessions? I doubt it. But you needed a win.
I mean,
so I'll give it to you.
Don't you patronize me, you son of a... but no, I do think that's a good call. Bannon is going to be is already in a compromised position. He was named specifically by...
He's trying to suck his own cock.
That is somewhat compromising. And the fact that the next Trump speech talked about MS-13 and anti-immigration, which I guess is kind of a pro-Bannon thing, but
and so that's why it's a shot in the dark for it. It's really not. The chances of that falling through, the chances of Bannon being out before Sessions or I think before the holidays is pretty slim. But let's say we get to Christmas and, because that whole ban on immigrants is going to expire. And let's say we don't have, in place something that everybody can agree on from the GOP side in terms of immigration reform, right? Like we're still kind of in limbo. Let's say we don't get, by Christmas, we still don't have Obamacare repealed. We still don't have tax reform. All that, if none of that is in place by the time we get to Christmas and the New Year, and those guys being in office for a year, then that's when I really see, Bannon's position being, his circle is small and his position really being threatened. Right now they're still going to try to push it forward. So Trump talking about law and order, talking about MS-13, pushing him back to Mexico. Using drug proceeds from El Chapo to help pay for the wall as a part of this whole kind of, they're trying to blend that in the tax reform, and that's how the wall is going to get paid for. Which, I mean, okay, even if El Chapo has $1 billion in proceeds that they've seized, according to them, this wall's going to cost $20 billion to build. So now you've got $2 billion of your 24.
So can we spin this a bit to healthcare, because so much of this seems to be about, so much of what's gone on since Trump has been put in office is knock down anything Obama could take credit for, right?
Obviously, yeah.
And
I think that's
yeah, I'm not shocking the world with that one. And so now they are failing at repealing and replacing. Then they failed at a straight repeal. John McCain basically gave a big old fuck you to Trump. I listened to my buddy Andrew Wilkow today, and he was, bemoaning the betrayal of McCain on the Republican Party and asking people to stand up to McCain's appeal to tyranny. And I flipped the switch a bit, Steve. I didn't get mad. In fact, I reveled in it, because I listened to that jackass talking about how okay. By the way, Bill Kristol called Trump a jackass on CNN while I was driving home on Friday.
You're not
Thursday.
Bill Kristol.
I'm not on CNN. And anyway, it was hilarious. And then some guy on Trump's side got so bent out of shape. How dare you say that word? And back to the whole Scaramucci thing. As adults, if the word jackass rattles you that much, don't go on TV. In fact, don't leave your house. Put on a big padded suit and save yourself. But anyway, where was I? You distracted me with your chiding.
You were talking about Wilco's meltdown.
Yeah. So he has a meltdown, and he's doing the whole thing about how, you don't want the government deciding your health care. You don't want the government deciding this. And I had an incident in my family reunion about how Obamacare is costing me this, that, and whatever. And this needs to get said, and I want to announce I will do a side rant on the show and on YouTube later this week and get into painstaking detail. I know how much you love hearing me rant about that, and I don't want to go there. But there is a lot of truth to the fact, or to the statement that the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, has caused rates and premiums to skyrocket. And the reason it has is because we've left things in the hands of private insurance companies that care about nothing other than profits. And as the government has dictated, you can't screw over the people who buy your products. You need to, pay for them. These profit-driven companies have jacked prices up. And that's, to me, what is the unspoken, not nearly spoken enough anyway, problem. That we have private insurance companies whose one and only goal is profits, and they're basically playing roulette with health, and they would like nothing more than to not have the government regulations prevent them from dropping people once they become expensive. And the people, I said people, so I didn't name call, like Wilcow and Hannity and all these other people, excuse me, just get to duck the reality that when you take people out of the insurance pool and put them into when the insurance company drops them, they fall into the problem into the hands of the general public. The only people that benefit from that are the insurance companies that are basically playing roulette with the lives of American people.
Listen, here's the deal. Like you said, insurance companies are about profit, right? So, no matter what happens, right? And in my opinion, insurance isn't going to get cheaper, right? Insurance doesn't get cheaper. There are very few instances where, people's premiums go down, right? There's always that one guy who's like, oh, well, back in 1997, my premiums went down, and that was, whatever. There's always exceptions, because there's a lot of different variables and algorithms and formulas that go into, underwriting insurance. But ultimately, a lot of times, for the most part, the shit's going to go up, right? It's an insurance company. They're about profit. They're about money. They're about dollars. And you take away Obamacare. Obamacare isn't healthcare. Obamacare is insurance law, right? It's a law on how insurance companies can treat the people who get insurance through them. That's what Obamacare is. It's not actual health care. Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is a law. It says, the point of it is to tell insurance companies, this is what you can and can't do. You can do whatever. Like, you can still, go for profit, still all this other shit, but there's certain things that you can't do because it really screws people over. Now, the biggest being you can't drop people. Hold on. I get it. We get it. But the issue is, you take this law away, right? So they repeal this law, they take it off the books, they don't have a plan to put anything else in place. Do you think that insurance companies at that point in time, when you say, hey, you don't have to insure people with pre-existing conditions, you can drop people if they are too expensive, you can limit what you cover, when you cover, all that other shit. Do you think insurance companies are going to voluntarily do any of that? I'm pretty sure we all assume the answer is no. And so you may not like Obamacare. Obamacare may have impacted you negatively, but for the most part, it's helped a lot of people. And when they repeal this, because I believe eventually they'll get there, they'll get to a place where they can repeal it. And once they do, then I don't think that they're going to be able to rein it back in. I think what the GOP is figuring out is that while Obamacare isn't perfect, we have to get away from calling it Obamacare. The Affordable Care Act is perfect. It still, the reason why it's not perfect is because it was necessary, and the system is so screwed up that there wasn't much else that you could do without going to a single payer system, which people are so terribly afraid of. Or a single payer system, or some form of where essentially the government provides healthcare.
Well, no, please say that right, though. Not where the government provides health care, where the government manages health care being delivered to people. So, because that gets misinterpreted all the time. People say, I don't want the government doing this. The government, you're still going to have private doctors. You're still going to have doctors making money. You're still going to have, doctors being well taken care of and health care advances getting made. It's not government providing health care. It's government getting in the middle of how health care is paid for. Excuse me. I'm not trying to step on you. Because as soon as you say government provided health care, people lose their minds. I'm like, stop it.
Okay, well, hold on. You're losing your mind. Let's relax.
I've got my mind. It's right here.
Listen, I think you're right about you're right about a lot of this. It is a clusterfuck. The interesting thing for me is to see how Republicans and the GOP can figure out how to come together on this. Because all they've done is talk. They have talked nonstop about repealing the Affordable Care Act for the last 7, now going on 8 years. Right? That is all they've talked about. And it is remarkable to me that they didn't have a plan. It's remarkable to me that they didn't have the slightest inkling at how difficult it was what they were actually trying to do. I've said this before. It was never really about how good or bad the Affordable Care Act was. It was always about impacting Obama's legacy negatively. It was always about taking away anything that he did that was viewed as a positive. It was always about spinning it. You have congressmen and senators who don't know dick about healthcare, who don't know dick about insurance, who don't know dick about insurance law, talking about how bad Obamacare is. They don't even know, most of the people probably don't even know how their own insurance works. They just know they show up to the doctor, they have a card that says, I'm a U.S. fucking congressman on it, treat me better than you treat everybody else, and they get their shit taken care of. They get their Viagra, they get their vasectomies, they get their fucking blood pressure pills, and they don't have to worry about shit. I don't think they know. A lot of these people don't know dick about they don't know dick about any of this. But it was an easy talking point to talk about, to just start a sentence with, well, 1, we have to repeal Obamacare. 2, Obamacare is terrible because I just heard Marco Rubio say that it's expensive. So I'm going to say the same thing. Damn it, it's awful and we got to get rid of it. They have no idea how it impacts their actual constituents, right? There is no way that Mitch McConnell actually understands how it works, right? With him coming from Kentucky, one of the worst states hit by all sorts of different issues, right? That'll all be directly impacted by and when they repeal Obamacare. His state will be worse for it, but it's still more important for him to kick Obama in the nuts than it is to actually do what's best for his constituents.
I mean, absolutely. I think you and I are mostly on the same page here. The thing that I really want to see is for someone on the Democratic side to write a bill, and I do not want to butt heads with you on this at this point in the show, but to write a bill that challenges this, that puts a public option out there that I know damn well, and I know we fought about this on and off the air, that I know that bill will fall flat on its face in the Congress now. But I think it will be a great tool to use for the Democrats in 2018 when they say, hey, the Republicans talked about how shitty Obamacare was for 7 years, but did nothing. When they got their turn at the plate, they had nothing to offer. They just said, it's bad, make it stop. And if the Democratic Party can put someone out there, whether it's an Elizabeth Warren or some obscure congressman or senator, and say, hey, here's a plan. It's a public option plan. The big thing in the right wing now is that insurance companies are running away from the horror that is Obamacare because it's unfair, it's whatever. And so now there's no competition, and if you open up competition, things will get great. Well, fine. You open up competition, things will open up competing factors who are trying to make more money. Throw in a public option, let it get shot down, and let Democrats run on that getting shot down in 2018, I think that shakes things up a ton.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And, I think, first of all, I think that there are some lower level Democrats that we don't know by name, that we haven't seen, that are not part of the old guard, who have ideas, who have, who have put things together. And it's just a question of really finding them and highlighting them, or, at least bookmarking them, to come back to it and say, okay, can we get this person together with this person and come up with a broader plan that, maybe impacts more people in a positive way, right? Like, this guy in California, I like this, so let's take a piece of yours with this congressperson from New Jersey, and let's mix those together and see what we can get. I think that's really what the Democrats need to be looking at. They're not. The Democratic leadership, I think, is my opinion on it. It's not good. It's not strong. And I do want to come back and say, we talked to Dr. Wilmer Leon a couple weeks ago, and I asked him about the state of Democratic leadership. And, and my issue was, I didn't feel that, the Chuck Schumers and Nancy Pelosi's were really, and Tom Perez, were they the right choice, to help lead the Democrats into, elections in 2018 and 2020. And while he didn't come out and say, no, they're the wrong choice, he said that they're really not progressive enough, right? And we didn't really push him on that, and we didn't get into that, right? Well, I mean, we talked about it, but we didn't push him on it, because I think my whole thing is, listen, we need to bring back those, people who are on the fence, people who are in the middle, the middle-class white person who got annoyed by the progressiveness of the left and went right. And I think a lot of the prevailing thought from, a lot of the underground Democrats and people like Dr. Wilmer Leon is that, you know what, if they went that direction, screw them, leave them. The real key is, getting all the progressives, all the different groups, gay, lesbian, LGBT, Black, Latino, every, underrepresented minority, every group out there that feels like the Democrats and the Republicans actually don't give a shit about them, getting them together under one banner, and then pushing further to the left, and completely just, kicking the old guard to the side. Because I think the thought is, if you garner enough of those groups, right, then you have enough of a majority, because we're still dealing with the same. One of the biggest issues is that generally a majority of people in the country don't vote, right? Like, so if you can get enough of those different alienated groups together to kind of form under one message, then you can shift the needle. You can move you can move things and get things to go the other direction. And that all leads to, the Democrats and their new plan and their new slogan.
Oh boy. So, we talked about this before we got on here.
You said you haven't heard
I have not heard it, and I'm terrified.
Well, let's start there. The actual slogan is a better deal, better jobs, better wages, better future.
All right.
Does that sound familiar to you?
I mean, it sounds like Make America Great Again.
No. Think about this. A better deal, better jobs, better wages, better future. Papa John's. Better ingredients.
Oh, no. Fucking hey, Steve.
Listen, I'm not...
So you're saying Peyton Manning should be the next...
Right, like Peyton Manning should be the spokesperson
oh my God.
or Papa John himself. No, I'm not the only person to make that connection. Plenty of people have. I'm pretty sure it feels like it came from the same company who came up with the slogan for Papa John's. It's awful on so many different ways. It completely misses everything. Again, like, they're just completely oblivious. A better deal. That's such a play on the New Deal, and the New Deal was 60 fucking years ago. I mean, it's just like, all right, well, we can't think of anything else, so let's just go back to one of the best Democrats ever and just go back to FDR. And, we go back to FDR and we'll play off that and we'll start with a better deal, right? It's not the New Deal because we already had the New Deal, but it's a better deal. Right? And you know what, with this better deal, we're going to have better jobs and better wages, and that means a better future. It's going to be totally awesome.
And better ingredients.
Love it.
And better ingredients.
Right. And better ingredients.
All right.
Pizza at Papa John's.
Steve.
So,
go ahead.
I again, Democrats completely missing the point, missing the mark. The people who announced it was Chuck Schumer, it was Nancy Pelosi, two people that they're literally just there playing the game. Like, this has nothing to do with actually helping people. Every time Chuck Schumer is on, it's clearly just to garner spotlight, garner attention. He's not offering solutions. He's just there to criticize the GOP at every turn. He's heard that to the point where he and Nancy Pelosi said, okay, fine. You're criticizing us for not having a plan, so here's our plan. It's just, it's shitty pieces from our previous shitty plans all put together with a fancy new fancy new name, fancy new label, and better ingredients because it's going to make better pizza.
All right, that's a frustrating way to end this episode, but I think can we shut it down here and pick it up with the things that we've left hanging, because I am punching myself in the face with the Papa John's agency having won this contract.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I think it's a good place to leave off. I mean, Trump.
So much more out there.
Yeah, obviously, it's unbelievable how every week it's just a number of different topics where if you leave off, there's just not enough time. But, I think what we could do is, see how some things shake out this week, and jump back on the mic and give some.
I think we'll
give some of our thoughts. Give some of our thoughts and analysis in a day or so. So
sounds good. We have. We're going to ask our listeners, thank you very much for listening. We're whiskeycongress.com and, at Whiskey Congress on all social media. We got our YouTube stuff up there, and please give us ratings and give us reviews on iTunes and other venues. Help Steve and I get to the point where we can do this on a daily basis, because this stuff's going down on a daily basis.
Yeah, it works for me. So we'll give you a holler later.
All right, sounds good, man. Later.